Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the One Rule Church podcast. This is Cara. Today, we are going to be talking about lessons learned. What does that mean? So, last week we kind of, touched on this in saying that we don't like to call the lessons we've learned mistakes. The idea is that you either win or you learn, you don't lose. And something is only a mistake if you don't learn from it. And so we don't want to call them mistakes, we want to call them lessons. But I thought it would be interesting for us to kind of, just think about things that have happened in our own lives, both in our spiritual lives and in our personal lives. That maybe didn't go the way we planned or the way we hoped, and the lessons that we have learned from that, just so that you can maybe avoid some of the things that didn't work for us, and learn some of our lessons for yourself. So we're going to start with, I think, our spiritual lives, things that didn't work in our spiritual lives. We're waiting for Leah. I think Shernell just joined us. So I'll let Ashley start and then we'll just go around.
Okay, so in my spiritual life, something that did not work. Um, I don't know. I've been thinking about this. I'm like, what didn't work? I guess for me, oh, well, I think this is a whole nother topic. But what didn't work is like the whole purity culture standard. I think that if you're really talking about doing that, if you're really talking about staying celibate or being abstinent, it is something you have to make um, as a personal choice, and then not be a choice because I'm. Are you guys frozen? Uh-oh. Did I freeze out?
Oh, I guess we lost Ashley. Okay. Well, Cherie, we'll come back to Ashley. Cherie, if you want to pick up.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, so something that worked that didn't, I guess that didn't work for me while I was in the church is salvation by work. That wasn't something that resonated well with me in my spiritual growth. I felt that I don't know if it has to do with my personality or my mental or how I'm built or how I'm set up, but I got a lot of anxiety trying to, oh, I need to check all the boxes. I need to make sure everything is perfect, and that's something that I worry in my personal life. So to add that to my spiritual life also really took a lot away from me developing spiritually, um, and more so focusing on a checklist of things. Oh, I'm not gonna make it into heaven if I don't do X, Y, Z, L, N, O, P, blah, blah, blah. And so I think that I learned a big lesson when I stepped away from the notion of salvation by works and thinking that, understanding that, um, if I don't do all the things that mainstream religions say that I need to do, that doesn't make me any less or any unworthy of being in the grace of God or in the covenant of God or in the covering of God. So, yeah, I think that was a big lesson learned for me, understanding that that's not imperative. I have others, but I will wait. Just, I guess, come back to me if you have time.
Hi everyone. I apologize for my connection. It just like froze out on me. But what I was saying about the whole purity culture standard, I realized that when I got to the point that I wanted to focus on something different for myself, that's when that whole walk of not having sex outside of marriage and wanting to focus on myself and wanting to just kind of find my own self and my own self-worth, that's when that walk happened for me much more easily than when it was when I was just trying to be good or I was just trying to get a husband. So when I kind of got past that notion of I'm doing this because I've had so many other challenges and I want to do something different for myself and I want a different outcome, that's when the walk became easier. That's when it wasn't like a struggle. That's when it wasn't like, every like Tom, Dick, and Harry were like popping up in my message or sliding into my DMs or texting me with these, struggles. It was just kind of like, oh, this is the place where I am. I'm focusing on me. I'm not worried about all of these other things that I'm supposedly cutting off from myself. So I would say that for me, I've learned that you have to become to a place where you're ready. It's not like no matter how many stories you hear of hell and brimfire and stone and condemnation, until you're really ready to do the journey or you're really ready to let it go, that's when the walk will become easier. When you're fighting your own desires, and I'm not saying you should give in to all of your desires, but when you're really ready to let that thing go and when you're really ready to make another chance. And the more you get to the place of willingness, the easier the journey is.
I agree with that 100%. And I agree with Cherie and the works, trying to like work to save yourself. I think that kind of like both of your lessons kind of coincide. Like it's it's this idea that in order to make God happy, quote unquote, you have to live your life a certain way and be a certain be what other people have decided God wants you to be, as opposed to just having that relationship with God and allowing God to work in you to will and to do of His good pleasure. Like I love Paul in the Bible and the stuff that he talks about, because I feel like the things that are most important in my mind, I think that stuff gets glossed over. And I think people kind of hone in on the stuff that's not as important. But for me, where he says that one, God will work in you to will and to do of His good pleasure, like that's huge. Like it's not just God is going to work in you to do good things. It's God is going to work in you to want to do the things that God wants you to do. And so if I'm not in a space where I want to do certain things, or I even feel like certain things need to change, then and 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 that's based on what someone else is saying, as opposed to what I do feel like I need to work on and what I do have it within me to do, what I do, what God is working with me to do, focusing on what someone else has decided I need to do, as opposed to honing in on what God is actually working in me to do. I think that it completely takes you off track and puts your focus in the wrong places. And then it also says that the God who has begun a good work in you will see it to its completion. And it's just like, at what point do you trust that God has a plan? And a part of that plan is working in you to will and to do of His good pleasure. And as that process is taking place, God is going to finish the good work that He began in you and see it to its completion. And it's through God. We're saved by grace, not by works. And so, I think for me, kind of understanding both of those things, or learning to understand both of those things with purity culture and, with all other aspects of my spiritual life. Like I wasn't allowed to like wear earrings or jewelry. Like it was super strict. Ashley's looking like, what? But yeah, like we couldn't do anything. Like there were most things that I think a lot of people would consider normal, I was not allowed to do. And so just like little things, like being able to take it upon myself and to, take it to God, just me and God, and say like, is this something that is wrong? Are these people right? Or is it something that, isn't that big of a deal? And there were a lot of things that I was taught that I shouldn't do, that ultimately, based on my own relationship with God, I came to the conclusion it isn't that big of a deal. And that's not what's going to save me. And by letting those things go, like you said, Ashley, it enabled me to be able to focus on the stuff that I actually needed to work on. But I know Cherie had something else you wanted to say. And if Ashley, you have some other stuff, feel free to chime in.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay. I definitely wanted to piggyback a little bit on what you're saying, because that is a big part of it, especially being in, it kind of ties into my second thing being in a person who has had foundational training in the Seventh Day Adventist religion. Um, my second thing, I'm gonna ruffle some feathers with this one. Listen. My second thing that I feel like is a lesson learned for me was Ellen G. White walking away from E.G. White. Yeah, I'm gonna take it all the way there.
Tell us who that is for those who don't know, because Ashley is looking like who?
So Ellen G. White is like a prophet. She's like one of the foundational members of, well, not, members of the Sunday Adventist faith. She's written a whole ton of books. I don't know how many, but I'm sure either Cara or Leah knows. But and it basically, you know how there's like a lot of um guidelines and parameters and whatnot that are put on you based off of just the Bible alone. This is like adding extra rules on top of the extra rules, or thought processes of maybe extra guidelines or extra way of what it's just. It was, that was just it was just a lot. Like I, it wasn't for me. I had to make peace with that because there were quite a few things that I learned being 7 Day Adventist for the time that I was, that I felt like was for me, and I felt like it was very um, positive and beneficial to the spiritual walk that I'm walking right now. But when I was going through the process of deciding what to keep and what not to, that was something that I kind of struggled with a little bit of, why do I feel like I don't need to keep this particular part? And if I don't need to keep this part, why was I following this for so long? You know what I mean? And I think a lot of, I don't know if it's because of how EGY is taught or revered in the 7 Day Adventist faith, or it is, or if it's got a lot to do with the writing itself. I don't know which one it is, but just the line upon line of all, just the following so much of work that really isn't the Bible, and then putting the opinion over my opinion that I feel like I am getting from my relationship with the divine. You know what I mean? Like um, Carr was saying, for example, jewelry. You know, we were raised not to wear jewelry because the Bible says do not adorn yourself with ornaments. And you know, I was taken to interpret that we shouldn't wear jewelry. The reason why we shouldn't wear jewelry is because it's a distraction, and you know, it's got its root in worship and things of that nature. And I had to sit with that, and I was like, that's not something. And God brought me the understanding for me, because do what you do in your walk. But for me, God brought me the understanding that you know, it's more so what is distracting from your spiritual walk. If jury is not really distracting from your spiritual walk, why are you making this such a pressing situation? You know what I mean? Like, it's not as important as you're putting importance on this, and Ellen G. White is distracting you from your spiritual walk. You know what I mean? Following her teaching to the letter and being her in her vision of what is right was distracting me from the Savior. And I was just like, this was, you know, I hate to say, I don't want to get to the mistake because I don't want to offend anyone, but it was just something I looked at and I was like, okay, this is a lesson for me, that this isn't something that is beneficial to my walk. You know what I mean? So I'll leave at that since Shernell is here. So
And
E.G. White was something that I kind of had to walk away from a little bit. And I like some of the stuff that she writes. Don't I don't revere her the way that I used to, I guess, when I was walking a more traditional 7 Day Adventist journey. So I don't.
And just for a little bit of context, Ellen, I think a lot of like Christian denominations have like a prophet or some kind of like, like I don't want to say like a holy book, but some kind of like book or something like that or books, a series of books that like interprets the Bible and, sheds light on things, commentaries, blah, blah, blah. That's not unique to Seventh-day Adventism. But I think across the board that's a little bit problematic, and they changed the fundamental belief about Ellen White. I don't remember which number it is, but it used to say that her writings were like, to be a Seventh-day Adventist, you believe in the spirit of prophecy as manifested through Ellen White, and you believe that her books are an authoritative source of biblical interpretation. And Ashley's like raising her eyebrows. Yes. And so the difficulty with that is that when you have something that is supposed to be, it's not just like, I forget, what are the words that we use in law, Ashley? You have like the precedents, you have an authoritative source, like the precedents that you have to follow. And then you have
like stare decisis, all that.
Like the ones that you have to follow, and then the ones that
or dicta.
Yes, the ones that you don't, like you can use them, but you don't have to follow them. So when you have something that is, supposed to be an authoritative source, it's not, you can take it or leave it. It's the truth. This is God breathed. It's God inspired. She's a messenger, and you're supposed to follow it. And the problem that arises is that it doesn't leave you room to be wrong. And I think, Ashley, you said that you are familiar with Judaism and things of that nature. If you look at how Judaism was practiced at the time when Jesus came, there was this idea that, God gave us these rules, but then we're creating more rules to kind of like hedge us from even getting close to breaking the rules that God gave us. And it was kind of the same mindset with Adventism. Like, we're supposed to be preparing for the second coming. We're supposed to be preparing the world. We have to get our hearts right. And they were taking notes from Mount Sinai when the Hebrews had come out of Egypt, and they were preparing to meet God at Mount Sinai. And they did, all of this stuff to prepare themselves. And so the idea was that Jesus is coming soon. We need to be preparing ourselves. So you take off all your jewelry, you take off all your worldly trappings, blah, 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 in order to prepare yourself. And we need to be hedging against what they called creeping compromise. And, it's like, okay, fine. They believe that Jesus was coming back, but this is over a century ago. At what point do you say, like, these people didn't even contemplate a world that was still in existence, 100 years later? We were supposed
the fact that Jesus said, no man knows the day or the hour.
And how about God? But it said, no man knows the day or the hour, but God knows. And so this isn't it's not some open-ended, that's a whole other thing. This isn't some open-ended situation where God, is waiting on us to figure it out and there is no end date. God has always known what the time span is. And there has always been an appointed time where everything is going to, conclude and Jesus is going to come back, whatever else. So it's not open-ended. It's just not our job to be guessing and trying to figure out what it is. And so it's just like but the mindset was you're supposed to be, preparing, and you're supposed to stay in this state of constant preparedness because no man knows the day or the hour. And for me, it was the same thing as with Cherie. It was like, at what point do I stop taking these people's word for it? Like, who decided that they have the truth? Who decided that Ellen White is a messenger from God? Who decided that their interpretation of biblical prophecy is it? They did. And why am I'm a living, breathing person with a brain that is functional. I'm capable of having conversations with God myself. Why am I relying on the next person and their ideas and what they thought and betting my life? Not just my salvation, but my life, the way that the things that I do on a day-to-day basis. I'm restricting all of that to what these people who lived over 100 years ago decided is the right way to live. And who are they? Like, why? Like, for me, it was just like, at what point do I take responsibility for my own, decision making? At what point do I say, like, I am just as capable of having a relationship with God as is anybody else? And why can't the God of the if the God of the universe was giving Ellen White visions and whatever else, why can't the God of the universe talk to me? He was so, deep in it with these people over here. Why can't I have that? And why is somebody telling me that I have to rely on their judgment as opposed to encouraging me and giving me the tools to figure out how to have that connection with God myself? And so just like waiting around, and I think, and I'm saying this, and I don't think it's unique to Seventh-day Adventism. I think that that's Christianity in general. Everybody, in one way or another, is relying on the understanding of the next person. And I've said it before, at what point do you rely on God to be God? At what point do you believe that God loves you and cares enough about you to make sure that you are doing what you're supposed to do, that God is going to work in you to will and to do of God's good pleasure, and that God is going to begin and finish to its completion a good work in you? And nobody else can tell you about that. Nobody else knows the plan and what it's supposed to look like. So at what point do you say, you know what, forget the distractions and everything else that's happening outside of me? Like, I'm going to focus on God. So yeah, I could go on that tangent for forever, but Shernell, go on ahead. Welcome.
I agree. No, I agree 100% with what you're saying. I agree all day long with what you're saying, and your sentiment, anything that you have discussed and said right now, it literally, these are the reasons. Like I told you, I think it was on our first episode, why I walked out, why God was calling me out of the church, because God was choosing to teach me in that type of way, because I was distracted. I was completely distracted. My eyes were not on God. My eyes were on the people that were in front of me. You know what I mean? Which is not helpful to anything that I need to be cultivating for my salvation or my spiritual growth. So don't apologize, because if you resonate with me, and I'm sure that there's somebody out there that's listening that resonates exactly with what you're saying as well. And it's just sometimes you need somebody to say it and put it into words. Sometimes you don't even know what you're thinking until somebody says it and you're like, oh my God, yes, all of that, that's exactly how I feel. So yes, all that. I don't know if Shernell has something she wants to say for the spiritual, how was it
Yeah, I kind of
lessons that we learned
lost.
while we're inside of the church.
Oh, yeah. So what we don't use anymore. So I don't really read Ellen G. White anymore. Um, I love the Conflict of the Ages series. I think that's probably the best representation of Jesus, or just the whole biblical story centering Jesus, that I've read. So I do like that. I like her insights. I like maybe bits and pieces of the Adventist Home. That's about it. I feel like, I think there was a talk that Pastor Vanderhorst was on, and it was talking about just how we need to really take a look at our Adventist roots and kind of see how it's been whitewashed. And he said that, I think, so this is paraphrasing, that the Adventists used Ellen White kind of like as a distraction, I guess, from the all the other things that were going on in the church, and they kind of just lifted her up to kind of like distract from the other things that are going on. And I think that's true. Um, it's not to say that she's not a prophet. I think she is, but for me, her visions, her ideals, they're just not for me.
I don't think she's a prophet, but that's another conversation. um Shernell,
Girl, we
can
can
you
take
tell
it there. Take
Shernell, can you tell us like what you, because I know like last week you did say that like you had thought about like using tarot cards, and that was something that like you looked into and it didn't feel right, and you had like tried watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch, I think, and that didn't feel right in your spirit. Could you tell us like if there is anything else that you can think of that you tried or that you've done that you thought maybe would work for you and then it didn't, and like you figured out that it didn't, and how you figured out that it didn't work for you?
Okay, so to give context, I still go to church on Saturday. I sing in the praise team, all that stuff. And I'm still decolonizing my mind. So basically, I think in Leviticus it says soothsayers, horoscope, whatever it says. Basically everything that's not Christian is demonic. So I've been trying to unlearn all these things. So I'm reading these books, like, this doesn't seem demonic to me, but I'm still afraid because if you're doing any type of religion, you really need to know the basics of it, and you also need to be taught. You shouldn't just go willy-nilly into some type of spiritual practice and not know what you're doing. So the tarot cards at the time, I still miss her, but I really just wanted to speak to her, and I thought the tarot cards would be a way for me to channel her spirit, and I could talk to her. But then again, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes when the vessel is open, other ancestors or other spirits could come in, and I don't know how I would. I don't know how I would respond if it wasn't my mom, and it might be someone else. So that made me very nervous. And I really love horoscopes. I'm really into that. I did get my chart read. I'm into human design. I have my chart for that too. I'm a generator. So those two things I think are really great as tools to kind of help me figure out who I am. I guess the main thing that's really helped me is my womanist theology. So basically, like I said before, womanist theology is a branch of liberation theology that centers the Black woman's experience inside of Christianity. And when my mom died, it was like I didn't have no blueprint or whatever, because she provided my blueprint for being a Black woman and for being spiritual, but I had to find out on my own what that meant. So I started reading all these books, and it opened up a world to me. So I was like, I don't need Auntie White. I don't even know if she's even Black. Everybody says she's Black, but I don't even know if she's Black. So I'm just like, no, I'm just gonna put this down and read these other books of these scholars that have really looked into the text. They broke down the Greek and the Hebrew, and they were able to come up with a framework that centers me and my mother's experience. And it made a world of difference to me. And I think I just use discernment. With the Seventh-day Adventist Church and all their teaching, like the sanctuary message and what is the other stuff? I don't remember the stuff because I don't follow it.
You follow the Advent.
I don't even follow it anymore. I just believe in the Sabbath. I believe in Jesus. I believe in the Trinity, and that's it. And even I'm tired of being force-fed ideals that really don't ring true to me. I want to know God for myself. I want to make decisions on my own. I wasn't given that chance because my mother felt that Adventism was the right way to kind of guide me. And I'm not going to fault her for that, but I'm almost 40 years old. I don't have time to be with a religion that does not really reflect me and my ideals. I'm all about love and acceptance. They don't really show that. The religion, not the people. The religion really doesn't show that to me. I think they take women for granted in that church. They have been ordaining women, but before they weren't. Women's ministries is basically teaching you how to become a helpmeet to your husband. Like you don't have a voice. They discredit feminism. It's right on their website. So it's just all those things. And then there was the sexual misconduct that happened. I had to go. This is not the church that my family sacrificed for. I don't recognize it. And I don't have to be Seventh-day Adventist to go to heaven to see my mom. I can just be a Christian. And I'm on this journey now. I've read some of the Quran, and I was doing yoga. I have to get back into it. I read some of their books, and it's all pretty much the same. Like basically what all of these religions to me is just teaching you to look outside of yourself for balance and just love people and love one another. And you're going to have hard times, but if you really take time to focus on yourself, kind of block out all the noise and get yourself together, you'll be I guess you'll be, what's the word, of service to others. So,
and I think that's like a really important point about the decolonization part, and how like the fact that you are intentionally decolonizing your mind, and that's allowing you to, you know, kind of delve into waters that you were unfamiliar with and maybe a little bit afraid of, and you're able to use your discernment to, you know, figure out, and your relationship with God, and you know, having that connection to be able to discern whether or not something is in line with your beliefs. And I feel like that's something that not enough people are being intentional about. The decolonization portion is imperative, I think, for people of color within any organized religious structure. But specifically ones that have been, I don't want to say corrupted by white supremacy, because I don't believe, and we're going to talk about this next week, so I'm not going to get too into it, but I don't believe that Christianity, as anyone knows it today, is this catch-all, you know, for belief in Jesus. I believe that a lot of it, if not all of it, is steeped in white supremacist rhetoric. And it's not because that's what Jesus and the disciples, that's the angle that they were coming from. It's because Jesus and the disciples and what they did with the early church is not what we know today. And it was never intended to be that. And, you know, when you talk about the abuses of power, and, you know, not just the abuse of power, but, you know, sexual abuse and mental, emotional, physical, psychological abuse that happens within organized religious structures, and it happening with impunity. For me, the question that I feel like it is important to ask is like, where are we getting that from, and how does, or why does this ideology allow for these kinds of things to take place, and what needs to happen to be able to get away from that? And I think that when you're so used to something being a certain way, you're so used to having it driven into your head that this is the truth and this is right and this is what God wants, that you feel like you have to internalize it. And if you are not intentionally decolonizing your mind and seeking out other perspectives and being willing to dig into the things that scare you, right? That aren't, you know, comfortable, and challenge you and challenge what you think you know. If you're not willing to do that, then you're always going to be in a place where, you know, you're accepting whatever somebody else is handing you. And it's what we were saying about distractions and stuff earlier. It's making a god out of people and their ideas, as opposed to, you know, being willing to do the work to declutter all of that space so that God can actually show up and be God for you. So thank you for bringing that up, Shernell, because I think that that's a really important.
oh, and no, just one more thing. I never liked how they vilified Catholicism. Never liked it. All that amazing facts stuff. Was it Revelation seminar? All they did was demonize the church. I'm not saying that they're not. They've done a lot of grievances. I understand, but they made it. They just vilify them so much that you're thinking it's the people. And for a while, I thought it was the people, but they were talking more about the system. But I'm just like, isn't all religion kind of just as bad, just in general? Like, why are you fixating so hard on the Catholic Church?
And how much of Catholicism and their practices has been adopted by many Protestant denominations?
Most of it.
Like, besides the saints and the Hail Marys and stuff, how different is it really? You know, like,
and the
have
fact,
some self-awareness.
And the fact that is the only way, from what I understood back then, the only way for me to go to heaven is just to keep the Sabbath. Nothing about my heart or my character, or I don't know. It's not like that anymore. They've changed their rhetoric to where it's more of a, you need a relationship with God. But when I was growing up, everything to me was more geared towards the Sabbath and not really being a Christian. I really didn't even know about justification or sanctification until after I graduated from college. They even teach us that. They just told us you need to follow the doctrines, keep the Sabbath. It was a really fear-driven doctrine. And Ashley already brought this up about the purity culture. Yeah. I'm really trying to move past it, but they literally suffocated all of my passion away from me. Like, it was just, I had all of these feelings that I couldn't really articulate because I was afraid that somebody would say something bad. And I would tell my pastor about it and everything, but I just never really felt safe there. I never really felt safe. I only had my sister to kind of confide in with certain things. I was going to therapy. I need to find another one, but this church really messed me up. I'm sorry. They just really did. And I love my home church, like I said, and I love the people at my home church. I love to sing, but Adventism in general, it's done too much damage for me to go to actually espouse and declare that I'm an Adventist. I'm not. I'm a Christian that believes in Jesus Christ and
Go
the
ahead.
Spirit and God. That's all I believe in, and I'm going to heaven. And me and my dad, we gonna see my mom and live forever. That's what I believe in. That's
All
it.
right. Cherie, you had something to say?
Yes, I got a couple of things I want to say. I want to make sure that we're being balanced because we will beat the church there and rightfully so. But you know, um, because I'm one of the people on the podcast who has been about how open I am in my spirituality and how I am not just on the porch of the church. I'm all out in the field. I'm out here. You know what I mean? So I want to kind of give some lessons that I learned about things that I have encountered after I've walked away from sitting inside a church. Um, so I did delve into quite a bit of different spiritual things. I delved into African spirituality and its roots, and the lesson that I learned about that, because there's good and bad in everything, and that's one thing that Shernell just touched on deeply. That and that's very true. But the one thing that I learned about African spirituality that it was kind of like a lesson learned for me was that there's a lot of unknown. There's a lot of things that you don't know about it, just like there's a lot that we don't know about where we come from. You know what I mean? And so with there being so much unknown and you're learning, you're not getting a hands-on understanding of what is. You have to question how much of that is just as tainted as Christianity. You know what I mean? So you almost have to take certain things that with grain of salt as well. A lot of information just learning from the internet or learning from people who have learned from the internet, you start to realize a lot of inconsistencies. So then you have to flip and go into intuition about certain things and not necessarily what this person says, because then you run the risk of transferring the same things that you were doing in the church to just people who are in these different organizations outside of the church. So I learned that stepping out, because it is scary. Like Shernell was saying, it's scary or whatever, because I do use tarot cards. I'm not ashamed to admit that I do. And I will give you a tip about that in a second. But it is scary. And I feel like a rite of passage of learning spirituality outside of conventional or organized religion is understanding that you have to protect yourself. Like God says, guard the gate to your soul, guard your ear gate, your eye gate. Be vigilant and understanding that there are positive and negative energies out there. There are good and bad spirits out there. There are people who want to mean well and people who want to manipulate you. You know what I mean? Understand that is out there no matter what it is that you believe in. what it is, because people look at religion and spirituality as money, because if they can touch heart, they can take your money, you know. So you gotta look at that. That's just at the forefront of it. Um, this is why I take a lot of my foundational understanding from Christianity, understanding that how God works, God doesn't work in confusion. God works in inconsistencies. So if something is inconsistent, and that's a good indication this is probably not in alignment with the God that you're serving. If you still believe in the Creator God, it's probably not in alignment with that. You know what I mean? So I think that's a good a lesson that I learned stepping outside of organized religion. And then another thing, dabbling in, at one point I was introduced to Hebrew Israelitism or whatnot, and Hotepism and all that. And I don't mean to offend nobody. I'm just saying it wasn't for me, okay? It just wasn't for me. And a lot of hate, you know, a lot of division, a lot of we're better than other people, and that just did not resonate with what I feel love is about. Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say? Go ahead, Shernell.
Oh, sorry. I said a whole lot of misogyny.
Oh, yep. Well, yep. There's that. There's definitely that. You gotta have that on there. And so, it just wasn't something that I felt like was in alignment with what I needed. You know what I mean? It may be for you. That's fine. It is. You know, we don't judge here. We love. But it just wasn't. It didn't fit with the spiritual walk that I'm walking in. And but I did like that their attention to nationality and connection to the word and connection to God and all that. I love that, you know what I mean? But there's a lot of things that I didn't love. So when encountering, you know, Hotepism or Hebrew Israelites or, you know, 5%ers and all those things, I think for me, the biggest lesson I learned is take what resonates and leave what doesn't. You know what I mean? So when you are delving into other things, and when you are deciding, oh, I want to see what that's about, I want to read about this, I want to experience this, you don't have to be afraid, you know what I mean? But be cognizant, you know what I mean? Just if it does not sit well with you, you don't have to take it because that person is telling you that you have to take it. You're cultivating your own spiritual situation. And if that don't, listen, everybody don't want pork and beans on their plate. If you don't want pork and beans on your plate, don't put pork and beans on your plate. You know what I mean? Fix your spiritual plate for what is edifying to you. Do not put things on your plate that you don't want to eat. So that's all.
I agree with that. And just really quickly, something that I learned and I'm still learning and still struggling with, is that you can't control the outcome of things. Like, you have to live life, you have to stay present, and you'll drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what is going to happen in the future. You can have a vision, you can have what you want, you can, manifest and do all of those other things. But at the end of the day, the outcome is out of your hands. And you can't be outcome driven, right? Like, you can't allow what you think is or is not going to happen to dictate what you do today. And I mean that in the sense that, like, not to say like don't consider consequences, but like it can't be that I'm only willing to help people or like do this podcast, for example, if I know for sure that 1 million people are going to watch it or something like that. Like, you have to find value in doing the little things that you do every day, and then trusting the outcome to God, and just believing and having confidence in what God is calling you to do. And letting whatever is going to happen. I'm a bit of a control freak and a perfectionist, and so it's a little bit difficult for me to kind of like do and let that go, not knowing what not knowing for sure what the outcome is going to be. But life is life, and we're very limited in what we have control over. And so just kind of like accepting that and settling into it and trusting that God is going to do what God needs to do on the back end of things, as long as I'm doing what I need to do, the little things that I need to do every single day. So I think that that's going to close our spirituality segment. Thank you, Cherie, for,
Yes.
the pork and beans analogy, because that's it. Like, at the end of the day, discernment is key.
For my audio, guys.
It's cool. But yeah, at the end of the day, discernment is key. And, it's about being open, decolonizing your mind, and being able to try things, face your fears, understand. Because I think we fear what we can't understand. And so if you take the time to understand something and then make the determination that it doesn't work for you, if nothing else, you walk away not having that fear anymore, because you understand it, you know what it's about, you know why it doesn't work for you. And at the same time, you can have compassion and empathy for people who it does work for, because you understand it and you have conquered your fear of it. And you don't need to feel threatened by someone else, doing something that does not work for you, to the extent that they're not, being evil and causing harm and whatever else, in which case, that's not cool. But
that is so, what you're saying is so important, especially to a person like me who does spiritual things that are quote unquote unconventional, you know what I mean? So like yoga and tarot and things like that, and people, you find out, you feel like you have to hide in your closet doing certain things because you don't want to be judged or whatever the case may be. But if people understood, if people took the opportunity to care, to understand something that was different than what they are doing, then they can at least treat you like a human being, you know what I mean? They can at least understand, okay, well, this person is not the boogeyman trying to get me or whatever the case may be. But I think that what you just said is so imperative, and a lot of people don't take the time to do that, and unfortunately it breaks the very first promise and the very first rule that we all should be striving towards. It breaks that love that we should have to one another when we meet people with judgment before we meet them with understanding.
And I think I think that's very true. And I think when you have, I think compassion and empathy are born from self-awareness and humility. And as you understand and become confident and secure in what you think and believe, and not from like a cocky or arrogant position, but just like, you're good. Like, I know what I believe and I feel secure in that. And so I don't have to feel threatened by, what happens from the next person. And also being aware of my limitations, right? Like, I know what I think and what I believe, but I know that I don't know everything. I know that I'm limited and there's only, so much time on this earth for me to figure out certain things. And so, and I think in understanding your own limitations, you're able to have compassion and empathy for other people's journeys, because, you recognize we're all limited. We're all doing the best that we can. And I think it's people who don't necessarily understand their own limitations that are, I think, less likely to be willing, one, to take the time to understand where someone else is coming from, and then to have that compassion and that empathy for, somebody who's coming from a different perspective. All of that being said, what are some things in you guys' personal lives that you have learned that did not work for you, and you either have overcome or are working to overcome? I can tell you right now, people pleasing is the absolute worst thing in the world. It has negatively impacted every aspect of my life.
Too.
Like, it's the absolute worst, and it's so incredibly difficult to like take ownership of my own like thoughts and feelings and my decisions, and not be worried about what the next person is going to think or feel about it. Even in my home with my husband, like getting to a place, I was like walking on eggshells trying to like make him happy, quote unquote, not even recognizing like we're both responsible for our own happiness. And me walking on eggshells and trying to like do every little thing that's going to make him, that I think is going to make him happy. One, isn't going to make him happy, and two, it's going to stress me out, and three, he's going to be annoyed and unhappy because I'm over here doing the most. And so when I, stop looking outside of myself for validation and, just decided to make my own decisions and to take ownership of them, and to accept, that I can't control what people think or how they feel about it, and they may not react well, and I got to do what I got to do. It improved my relationships. It improved my spirituality, because that was a big thing, I think, in coming out of organized religion, and starting our own church, like, being afraid of what people were going to think or what they were going to say and the judgment and everything else. I've learned that you can't allow what you think someone else is going to think or do, or say about what you do, dictate the moves that you make. You have to allow, especially if you're relying on God to, guide you, you have to, be confident in your choices and take decisive action, and then take ownership of whatever happens and whatever the fallout may be. And I think for me, if I'm so concerned that, like I'm too worried about what's happening around me that I can't take ownership, then I feel like it's probably something that I shouldn't even be doing. But if it's something that I can take ownership of, even, I think I have to like lean into the anxiety of people, of like, the anxiety is still there sometimes, but I think it's about like leaning in and doing it anyway. And if people are uncomfortable or they don't like it, what I tell myself is, if I'm making you uncomfortable by doing something that I really feel convicted that I should be doing, or just by like being myself, then good. And that's my metric now. Instead of, like, is everybody agreeing? Is everybody validating? Does everybody like it? And looking at who is uncomfortable. That's the other thing. If these people over here are uncomfortable with what I'm doing or don't like it, it's like, chances are I'm probably doing something right. And you got to lean into it and embrace it and keep doing it. So yeah, Ashley, if you want to go, I know you
I
got
think
some.
Yeah, I think that's super. I had got to a point in my life, when you were saying about the uncomfortableness, that like, I think I've always had a very strong constitution of what God has called me to do, even from a very young age. And I had to get to the point where I'm like, I wasn't born for your comfortability. Like, I didn't come to make you comfortable. I came to change the world. So like, that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, because the status quo is where we want to keep things, right? Even in your own kind of life, the status quo is comfortable. Humans, we want to be comfortable, we want to be safe, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but you have to look at what comfortability is costing you. There's always a price for something you have to pay. But in regards to like the lessons that I learned, I would say like one of the biggest things, I think, especially in the church, we are taught so much, especially if you're coming from a background like I've come from, where, we did deliverance, and, we believed in the laying of hands and the casting out of things, and that you could come to the altar and you could leave it on the altar and you would just, go back to your seat, miraculous healing. That there are some works that are God's works, and there are some works that are your works to do. And when I say that, I mean that no matter how many times I went to the altar to pray that God will heal my broken heart from the pain and the abandonment and the rejection that I had from my father not being in my life, that no matter how many times I went to the altar and got back up, that pain and rejection wasn't going to be left on that floor. That work had to be done by me. That work had to be done with ill work and healing by me going through therapy and figuring out those issues in my life and figuring out where those triggers were and where that abandonment and rejection was coming out and showing up in my life and my relationships and how I felt about myself, and the seeking approval and the validation and just wanting to be loved. And I really had to do that work. That wasn't a God's work. That was of my work. And of course, God graced me with the strength to persevere. But I think in church, sometimes the lessons that all God is enough. And I'm not saying that God isn't enough, because He is a sustainer and the creator, and He gives us the grace to walk it through. But some things you have to work out yourself. Some things you have to go to therapy about. Some things, it's going to be healed when you have love and you have acceptance from other people. So for me, one of the lessons learned was like, man, like these things that I'm praying about and the things that I want healed, but what is the work that I have to do, for myself, so that I could come to that complete place of healing, and that complete place of just being whole and complete within myself. I think another lesson is that I learned is that, prayer works, and that you have to be willing to receive the answers of the prayers that you ask for. Because sometimes we pray for things and then they come, and because again of our own our internal wounds and our internal issues, we're not ready to accept what the truth is, right? Like, I prayed for one time that I was in this relationship that I just knew something wasn't right, and I prayed for an answer, and God revealed it. And he revealed that that person was cheating on me. And, but I wasn't really ready to let that relationship go. I wasn't ready to let that dream go. I wasn't ready to let, this ideation of the perfect person and the one and this marriage and all this work that I had put in. I wasn't ready to accept that God was saying to me, baby, this is not what I have for you. You've prayed. I've answered your prayer, but then I had to do the work of willing to let it go. And I think one of the lessons that I learned is like doesn't always save us from ourselves, right? We can say that we want these things, and we could say that we desire these things, and then we do everything on the opposite side of what we've asked for. And then we get upset at God when the hurt and the pain comes, and we don't take responsibility and accountability for our own actions, for our own consequences. My mom would always say to me, and like this is something I live by, and like I think about anytime I'm doing something, like your consequences are greater than your actions. And that, when we have a relationship with God, I truly believe that God never leaves you ignorant. I do not believe that he allows you to move through this life and throughout this world without giving you warning signs and, the yield signs, and like, hey, this is not the path that I have for you. And we continue to go down that path. So I've come to learn that, some journeys in life are my own doing, and then some journeys in life are God's work trying to strengthen and preserve me, and to give me, the perseverance and the strength and the things that I need to take me to the next level. So I think in your relationship with God, you really not, I think when you have a true relationship with God, you have to do a lot of self-examination. Like that you can't have a relationship with God, and you can't be in honest standing with God and not do internal work on yourself, so that you can be all that he's called you to be, and you can do all that he's called you to do, because it takes you to work on yourself so that you can be the vessel from which God, does his work in this world. And I don't think a lot of times in church that personal accountability is talked about. It's all about either the works, like you say, you're serving in church, you're spending 9 to 5 every day in the church, and you're doing the offering, and you're praying, or in the church praise, you're praise dancing, you're doing everything else, but you're not doing the internal work on yourself, so that God can really flow through you and show up in every area outside of your life. And my last thing I would say, the lesson learned is like, I think that when you hear kingdom work, you always think about it in terms of the church, and not really thinking about how God can use your life in terms of kingdom work. And so for me, one of the lessons I learned, because I always felt like, I know, like I come from a background of a family where a lot of them are in the ministry or hold positions in the church. And I never felt like that was a calling for me. I never felt like, that was something that I wanted to do or desired to do. And, one, I didn't want the responsibility. And two, because I truly believe when you're living a life of service and you're called to a higher place, and you have a higher level of responsibility that you have to live your life by. Um, and I didn't want that responsibility, to be honest. And two, I just didn't feel like my work was in the church. And one of the lessons that I learned is like, man, what God has sent you to do in this world may be outside of the church. And that is just as important as serving inside of the church. My ministry may not be, the prayer ministry at church. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have a prayer life, but my ministry may be in boardrooms. It may be in courtrooms. It may be in politics. It may be in service to other people. And so having this, one of the lessons that I learned is like having this limited view of God and having this limited view of kingdom work can kind of constrain you and not have you focus on the callings that and the gifts that God has given you. And so you spend your whole life in church, but then you don't cultivate the things that God has really put you on earth to do. And you miss the people you really were supposed to touch and the lives you really were supposed to change because you're looking at God's service as in I got to serve the church when your service may be out there in the world. So that's all
I
I
have a
have to
question,
say.
Ashley. Oh,
I just
Yeah.
want before you. I'm gonna fly out of this chair if I don't say. Let me listen. You are preaching. You are preaching right now. You are. Oh my God! I could fly away. That was so perfectly said. Because oh my God, it's like that statement. You never know you never know who you are touching, or you. Sometimes the only God that people see is the God in you, and they can't see it if you're locked up in a church. You are preaching. Oh my God, I could fly away. The Spirit touched me when you said that. I'm sorry. I know y'all see me over here. I'm trying to keep myself in the chair. You're preaching with that one. Go ahead, Cara.
so no, I agree 100%. And I have noticed this and said this before that I think the lack of self-awareness is profound with people within organized religion, and this is across the board. And I don't even know like where to start to tell people to like how you overcome that. And so I'm interested, to know if you can kind of, to share a little bit about how you self-examine, because I think people think that they're doing it. I think people think that they know themselves and they think that they're self-aware when they're not. And so like, how do you go about self-examining, and what would you say to someone who, maybe like thinks that they're doing it but aren't actually doing the work that you were just talking about?
I think for me, it's important to have people in your life that you trust and that hold you accountable. Also, too, therapy, I think, is very important for you to come to self-aware. I am 100% like, I believe in therapy. Um, I believe that most of my relationships and even the relationship that I have with myself have benefited from me doing the work on myself. And the third thing I would say is um, things I don't like in other people, I then ask myself, do I see those traits in me? Like there are times when you meet people and you're just like, oh, they just rub you the wrong way, and I'm like, but do I say that or do I do that? So I really try to, and honestly and truly, like, because I take to heart so much, treat others how you want to be treated, I'm constantly examining myself, right? I'm constantly being like, is that idea a self-serving idea? Is that viewpoint limited? Am I closing myself off to something because I don't walk in your circumstances and I'm looking at it only through my lens? And that's human nature, right? We're all gonna, take things and look at it through our lens because that's a lot of the times the only lens that we're able to see through. I haven't walked a lot of miles in other people's shoes, so it's easy to judge from my lens. But then I really talk to myself like, man, what I want somebody to judge me for that, what I want to feel that way if somebody else did it to me. So that stops me a lot. And truly, like honestly, I have a heart for people, and like I truly believe, like I take into account um all the time that when I say, like, when I stand before God, I want him to tell me that I did everything that I was sent to do. And I my walk and my life was in line with what he wanted for me to see. I truly take that to heart. And so that helps to guide me and center me. Like my center and my core is like, man, I want to make sure that I'm doing what God has called me to do, and I'm treating people the way that God has called for me to be treating them. And it starts with your family. It really does. It starts with how you're treating yourself. Charity starts at home. It starts with how you treating your kids, how you're treating your sisters and your brothers. How are you dealing with those difficult people in your life? Family sometimes can be challenging, all of the dynamics. How are you dealing with those family members? How are you just treating people in your own space? And then you move outside of yourself and look to your friends and your family or your coworkers and how you're moving in the world. But I I think that your relationships with other people will truly tell you who you are. And so, because that people are mirrors. The people that are in your circle are mirrors to you. So if you don't like half your mirrors that you see, then that's really what's a reflection of yourself. So
You better let the spirit take the words up out of my mouth and say them for me. Yes. Oh my God. I wanted to say mirror so many times. Yes, you are. That is, huh. Yes. And to piggyback on what she's saying, that whole family piece is so important because there are a lot of people who treat people in the church better than they treat their own families. They dog their families out at home, but they are the most saintly, sanctified person in the church house. And I feel like that church, that family thing is so important because these are not people you can just cast away. You're related to this person by blood. You're stuck in this situation, sort of say. You're stuck with this person. So therefore, I feel that those are some of your strongest mirrors. These are the people who reflect more of who you really are, than these people who only know an exterior viewpoint of who you are. I think your familiar mirrors are the strongest mirrors that you could possibly have. They're gonna show things that you think that you're hiding from the world. So, girl, girl, girl.
And I think the people you trust point is really important because there's
Yes,
people who will view you a certain way because of their hangups, and that is not a true reflection of who you are. And you're never going to succeed trying to change yourself to accommodate those people. But people
that part.
who you trust, who know you, who have a vested interest in you being the best version of yourself, who don't take any pleasure or any joy in telling you, maybe the truths that we don't necessarily want to hear. Those are the people that you can trust to be honest with you and share the truth with you about yourself in love because they're doing it because they want to help you. And I feel like ideally that's what church is supposed to be too. Ideally, church is supposed to be a place where you have this family of people who know each other and love each other and are intimately connected each other and have a vested interest in the collective success of the group. And so it's not about policing each other's, behavior. It's about being there for each other. And because of that relationship, you're positioned to see when something may be going on internally and to be able to, provide accountability, support, encouragement, whatever that person may be. And on the other side of it, they're going to be open. They're going to be open to inviting you into that space with them because they know that they can trust you. They know that you've taken the time to build a relationship and to show that you can be dependent upon, to see them in the way that they need to be seen in a given situation, to allow God to work through you to make whatever changes need to happen. And I feel like not enough emphasis is put on that trust portion because people will throw that around like, no, you don't want nobody to hold you accountable. You just want to do whatever you want to do. And it's like, no, I don't trust you because you don't know me like that. You don't know me
And
well enough to be telling me, what I should and should not be doing. And you don't have a
right.
vested interest in my success. You don't have a
And
vested interest in me being the best version of myself. And so this isn't about me, it's about you. And no, I'm not receptive to that. No, I'm not
that's
changing
right,
for that.
because the mirror is supposed to just be the mirror. The mirror doesn't talk to you. The mirror is just showing a person who they are. I'm being here to help show you who you are so you can do the work and you can adjust whatever you see in the mirror to your liking. It's not for me to tell you as the mirror, this is how you're supposed to look. No, I'm just supposed to be the mirror. I'm not supposed to be the person altering the person in the mirror. That's the person in the mirror's job to alter themselves. That's y'all is on today.
And sometimes it
Y'all
means
is
journeying with them, right? Like sometimes
yes,
being a part, it's
ma'am.
not just telling you or just showing you, right? It's not just showing you that there's something wrong with you. It's journeying with you through the process of you getting to where you need to be to get to the point where
Yes.
you're willing to make whatever changes need to be changed, right? Because that's what Ashley was talking about in the beginning. You don't just get there. You just don't up and decide, I'm ready to change because somebody has, bingo moment, this person's telling me I need to change. Now all of a sudden I'm just going to be completely different. Like, it doesn't work that way. Even when you're able to acknowledge that something needs to be done differently, it's a process to get to the point where you're able to do the work to make those changes. And sometimes you just need somebody to journey with you and be willing to love you in a space that isn't pretty and isn't together and isn't necessarily right, but they're with you. And I think you can sit with someone in a space that isn't good for them without condoning what they are doing. Me sitting with you in this space and being here for you isn't a license or an agreement for you to do whatever you want. It's I'm sitting with you in this space because you need somebody to sit with you in this space to be able so that you can know like you're loved here, so that you'll be motivated and you'll want to be able to do the things that you need to do for yourself to get to a better place. And it's a labor of love. It's sacrifice. It's not accountability, and having that relationship and that intimacy with people is sacrifice. And I think people want to be able to run around telling people what they should and should not be doing without being willing to take on the responsibility and the sacrifice that comes with true transformative unconditional love. So thank you, Ashley.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell y'all something. I don't know
Thank y'all.
whoever is listening. I don't know if y'all planned on coming to church today, but Ashley and Cara done took y'all to church today. They didn't talk y'all like for real, because those lessons that you guys just spoke about are things that people go to their graves never learning. And that's a part, that accountability piece, and that sitting, that is so imperative when you're talking about spiritual walk, when you're talking about learning lessons, when you're talking about mistakes, or versus lessons, when you're talking about any of that, understanding and being accountable for even the person that's quote unquote helping the person learn, you are just as accountable. We're all accountable. We're all accountable for each and everything that we do. Nothing gives us blanket immunity to be this person, whether it's callous or careless or whatever. So I'm just saying, y'all preaching today. Y'all
Amen
preaching.
to that. Amen.
Amen.
Cherie or Shernell, do you guys have any
Yes.
points to
I don't really have much of nothing. Y'all done took my stuff, so I just chime in after Shernell.
Well, for me, lessons I learned is not to be fake and phony. I think I mentioned this last week. Before I decided not to be Adventist and I was really heading into the church, I was doing a lot of performative Christianity, meaning I would be like, I would look like I'm being Christian, but I really wasn't. And I was very, very self-conscious. Like, I wasn't really sure about myself. And whenever I would express myself, I would get so much pushback. So I'm like, well, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But then I'm like, you know what? They don't know what they're talking about either. And to be honest, there's a lot of anti-intellectualism in the Adventist church. They don't read books. They don't study the original Greek. They don't study the original Hebrew. They don't go to actual, experts to really break down things.
Oh, we're going there. Okay.
They think that the King James Version is the best translation of the Bible, which it is not. But I guess if you go to other schools other than the Adventist schools, they will teach you that. But anyways, I don't know. It just.
Shernell said, "Do you read though?"
No, they don't read. They don't read. And when I give them the books, they're basically like, "Oh, outside people and outside ideas, influence, I am
Oh,
testing.
that's a big one.
I am testing and using my discernment to see what is true and what is not true. And I just decided I'm not going to be performative about it anymore. If I don't feel like saying the fourth commandment, I'm not going to say it. So usually when I'm singing and we have to say it, I don't say it because it seems like they're making an idol of the Sabbath. I don't worship the Sabbath. I worship Jesus Christ. So I'm not going to go up and say the fourth commandment because I don't mean it. You need to keep all the 10 commandments to go to heaven, not just one. And I'm trying to be more confident now in my abilities because I'm a really intelligent girl, but I was jealous. I had a lot of really deep-seated insecurity, and I'm still working on it. And the people pleasing, like I used to buy hundreds of dollars of food, and I didn't pay my phone bill, like just trying to look good for people who don't really care about me. They don't give a damn. Oh, sorry, they don't care. Sorry. They don't care. They really don't care about me and my family. They'll judge me, if I get pregnant or if I don't do something that goes along with what they think is right. But I don't really think people in my church, well, not in my church, but just in general, actually care about me. I know my sister does. I have great friends. I know you guys care about me. I have friends that care about me, but I really don't think that people in general care. So I shouldn't care about what they think either. I feel like if it's not harmful and it's giving me the peace and the balance and the joy and the confidence that I'm looking for, I'm going to do it. So at this point, I really don't care what people have to say about me. If you want the smoke, you can always go into my DMs. You can always call me. I'm not about the fake anymore.
Period, sis. Period.
I'm with it.
Like, I'm just not about the fake because I'm about to turn 40 in a couple of years. I don't want to be on my deathbed. Oh, I should have done this or I should have said this. No. I want to live my best life. And I want Black women in general to live their best lives. So I don't know how I'm going to do this, but, I'm going to open up my own wellness center for women. I'm actually thinking about getting a MDiv myself, but that's after maybe when I'm 50 years old, I'm bored or something, and I want to, really go back to school. I'll do that. But I really do want to get an MDiv in womanist theology and really help women like me who are really struggling to be Black women in church because it's hard.
It is hard. And for those who are unaware, an MDiv is a master's in divinity, I believe. And a lot of pastors have those, but a lot of non-pastors have them as well. And I think getting one in womanist theology would actually be like super interesting and super cool.
Yeah, so there's actually some classes coming up. So I think I may take it. I may it may be like a early birthday present. I may take 1 or 2 courses to see if I like it.
Go ahead, girl. And I do want to just say really quickly that what she was saying about Adventism, I don't think is unique to Adventism in that people, I think there's a lot of intellectualism within Christianity in general. And, this idea, because I hear it all the time, like you're being too logical or like, you're thinking yourself out of faith, that kind of idea.
That idea.
It's the stupidest thing in the world because we use faith with logic all the time when we breathe. Oxygen is faith. So I don't understand why they feel like you can't use facts in theory, in logic, and still be a faith-based creature. It makes no sense. You're breathing right now. The fact that you haven't floated off the earth is because you have faith.
And I really want to do a talk about logic because I don't think that people even know what logic is. And this is okay. So before I'm not even going to get too into it, but just for those who don't know, logic is math for facts. It's an equation and you plug facts into the equation and everything should add up. There should be a clear line of reasoning from point A to point B. That's it. You can take anything. Abstract ideas, concrete ideas, facts, opinions, whatever else. Any of those things can be logical. Logic is not synonymous with fact. Logic is a process by which you reason through any kind of information. And so if your faith or your ideology, your belief system is illogical, that means that there is not a clear line of reasoning from foundation to practice and behavior. That means that there are some holes, there's some breakdowns in there. And if you are okay with that, nobody can tell you anything about that. But what you're not going to do is tell me that I'm lacking faith by refusing to accept whole things that I feel have holes or logical breakdowns or whatever else just because you call it faith. That's not faith. That's, I don't know what you call it, but it ain't faith. Faith for me is the substance of things, right? Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. God says, come, let us reason together. Paul says, in Romans 14, let every man be convinced in his own mind. It's God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. I'm not supposed to be out here looking crazy. I'm not supposed to be out here illogical. Faith does not mean abandoning the brain and the education that God has allowed me to receive.
Because faith is paired with works, and if you have no understanding or recollection or practical alignment with faith, you can't do the working part. So this is why faith it needs to be logical, because faith without works is dead. That's the Bible. So if you can't understand why your faith is in this thing, how can you do the work that is necessary for you to walk towards it? It doesn't even make any sense. It just does not.
Because it's really
a few. Oh, go ahead. Nope, you go, Ashley, and then I just got a few things to say.
I was going to say, because it's really about control. When people do that, it's not about faith. It's not about your belief in God. It's about control in an organized system that says, if you do this and this, and then I can control your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and you can do what I want you to do. That's what that's really about. It has nothing to do with God and faith. It really has nothing to do with religion. It's about man-made control. That's what that's all about. I mean, we're just gonna call a thing a thing. That's what it's really about. And that's why they fear learning, and they fear those who want to read and understand for themselves, because if I come to know God for myself, then you can't control me anymore.
Yep. And I just wanted to say a few things about my personal things that I feel like were lesson learned. I have been married and divorced before, so what I learned from that was don't rush into things, don't rush into connections, because the church is telling you that if you with somebody or whatnot, you're shacking up or whatnot,
You're gonna burn.
you're gonna burn. You need to get married, because sometimes you're not meant to be in a union with everything. You're just not in that type of a way. You know what I mean? And sometimes you're meant to meet people for a season, for that person to be a mirror to show you something about yourself. That doesn't mean that you have to marry every person that is brought into your life to be a mirror. You know what I mean? So my marriage that I had taught me not to rush. College taught me that it's okay to ask for help when you need help with things. Don't sit around and feel like that you have to appear that you're knowledgeable about everything just because everyone around you is knowledgeable, because that's like a big thing. Like when you go into this arena, you come out of high school and you're the smartest in your class, or you're in the top, and then you go to college and everybody is just as smart as you. So you have this imposter syndrome situation going on, to where you're like, do I belong here? I don't know about, and if there's things you don't know, you don't want to be the stupid one, or appear to be the stupid one, or appear that you're not as intellectual as everyone else, or that you don't belong there. If you're in a place, if God put you in a place, then you are supposed to be in that place. I was telling my friend last week, don't wait to be qualified to be called. God qualifies the called. When you're put in a place, you're going to be qualified when you get there. So don't worry about looking a certain way or whatever. If you're there, you're there for a reason. And if you have to ask a question, you better ask that question, because you're there for a reason. There's something you have to be doing. There's a work that you have to be working on. And it doesn't matter what nobody else thinks about it. So the third thing was expectations. Stop worrying about meeting other people's expectations. It ain't about other people's expectations. People put 1,000 expectations on you. It's about the goals you set for your own self and your own life and your own walk. And A lot of times we put expectations on others because we see things in other people. You can see something in somebody all day long. It's not about what you see in them. It's about what God sees in you. And whatever God sees in you and whatever purpose God has put on your life, if that doesn't align with Sister Joseph's expectations of what they felt like God told them is of you, that ain't got nothing to do with you. Don't feel like you have to meet an expectation because an elder or someone else has told you that that was that is what God told them. If God told them that and that was for you, God gonna tell you too. God don't never tell nobody else something that don't tell you first. God gonna tell you before they tell everybody else. When that other person is coming to you, normally it's supposed to be a confirmation of what God has already told you in your prayer work and your meditation. That is a confirmation. When they hit you, you're like, oh man, yeah, because okay, thank you for confirming that that was what God was telling me in my prayer work. If it's something that's all the way off on left field, you ain't got to meet that expectation because this is Sister Mary and you love her. You can love her and say, thank you for your insight, and I'm going to go the path that I feel that is best for me. That is something that I had to learn also. And the last thing, bring your whole self to the table. Don't feel like you have to leave parts of who you are over here because this person may feel some sort of way about that part. Nope, I'm bringing my whole self to the table. You like it or you don't. This is just who I am. This is who I am in the wholeness of me. You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna feel slighted or feel some sort of way about this portion of myself. I got a little, my hair uneven on this side, so I'm just gonna tuck it. Every day I see I'm tuck it because I don't want you to talk about it. No, this is who I am. This is who I am. It's no point of me coming out to the world. I'm out in society and I'm only bringing a portion of who I am. And then it's eating me up inside because I feel like Shernell was saying, I feel fake or I feel fraudulent because I'm only bringing a portion of myself out. Get comfortable with bringing your whole self to the table. And those who you are meant to resonate with, those who you are meant to connect with, will gravitate to you. And those who you aren't, they will fall away from you. And that is okay. And those are the things that I learned.
100% to all of that. And say no. Don't
Oh,
be
yes,
afraid to
and
say
that.
no. Say no all the time if you need to. Just say no. Jack, my husband, he complains about me saying no, but no, just no, because people will
And
take
no
advantage
is
of your yes.
and no is a complete sentence.
Yes, no is a complete sentence. You don't gotta explain.
Ain't no cuz, no but, no, be, well, no, be, but maybe this, no, just no is no.
And you can't say yes to everything. Like you can't, just because an opportunity arises or something is put in front of you doesn't mean that you have to take it. That was something that I learned. Like it was like, if someone's bringing it to me, it must be from Jesus and I gotta, do X, Y, and Z. No. Like there's some stuff that, it's brought to your attention and that's fine, but you don't have to say yes to it. And I think it's important to, go to God and make sure you're having discernment about, how you're using your yeses and your nos. And, for people you care about, if you feel like you need to give an explanation or whatever else, then by all means, but you don't have to be, telling everybody your business and, trying to make excuses and explain and whatever else. Like we're all grown. That too. Like I'm grown.
Yes. Yes. Let your yes be your yes and your no be your no.
Right.
And you stand on it. When I say no,
Right.
don't be sending
You a
me
whole
another
wife and
person to try to
mom.
get convince
Yes.
me I'm grown. Yes is yes, no is
Right.
no.
You're a
No,
whole
like,
wife and mom.
right, like
Yes.
I saw something on Twitter, like millennials are 40. Like church, they were saying it was like churches, your millennials are 40. Like we are old. We are grown. We are not little children. And like taking, even just like internalizing that, like I had like family members and stuff who like, it's like I'm young. And so they're used to like being able to say certain things and whatever else. And it's like, yeah, no, I don't have to sit here and take none of this. And like, I'm grown. Like you're grown, but I'm grown.
Yes,
And I
and
appreciate you. I love you, but you don't know everything. And maybe I don't want my life to look like yours. Maybe, I'm supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z over here. And I respect you. I respect your experience and all of that other stuff, but I'm grown.
yep.
Thank
And
you.
and like Quentin is saying down in the comments on Facebook, he's still learning it. We're all still learning this. We are all still learning this. I'm telling you, I think it, like you were saying, Cara, I think it's a millennial thing. We have this thing to where we feel like we have to yield to the older. We have respect. You know what I mean? We as a generation, we are a very respectful generation. I feel like that the Gen Z, they got it figured out a little bit better than us. They living their life. You know what I mean?
They on 10.
We still a
They gotta
little,
break it down a little bit.
yeah, they need to get some respect a little bit. We're like, I feel like if we can figure the piece out to where we can get a little bit of accountability, onus, and individuality over our own life, and we would have the perfect balance because we have so much rooted respect in others and the wisdom that others can give to us. If we can figure that out, I feel like that would do wonders for our generation. And with that, I feel like we can do wonders for changing the world. But we're all learning that. I know, listen, it took me a long, I know, especially like when I was in college, coming home, you get that speech, oh, well, how's school going? What are your plans for your life? You know what? And you're like, you go through this whole thing of, I don't want to tell them that I want to change my major. I don't want to tell them that I'm struggling in anthropology class. I don't want to tell, and you're a whole adult and you're like, I don't want to tell them that I dropped that class. And it's like this whole thing that you do because we do have a lot of honor and reverence for our elders, which I think is dope. And I don't want to negate that. But we are grown. We are very, very grown, and we do need to at some point.
And setting boundaries is not disrespect.
It's not.
There's a difference between
Ashley to fill out.
There's a difference between setting a boundary and being disrespectful. Like, I've had people say to me, like, I would have thought that we could have a conversation and you only want to, talk to people who agree with you. And it's just like, no, that's not the case at all. I like having conversations. I like talking to people.
Me
as
too,
you can
girl.
see, I do it every week. I like
That's
having
right.
conversations with people who are different from me, who have different perspectives and all of that stuff. But just because I like talking to these people over here don't mean that I want to hear from everybody. And so, everybody is not entitled to a seat at your table. Everybody is not positioned to add value.
Everybody wasn't sitting at Jesus' Last Supper, but he loved everybody. But he only had, he only had 13 seats, 12 seats.
Unconditional love does not mean unconditional access. I can love you and love you from a distance. And I could have all the love in the world for you and love you from a distance because relationship is reciprocal. It's about reciprocity. It's not, I love you unconditionally and let you take full advantage of me and run all over me and do whatever you want because that's not love.
You better preach.
Man.
Is we're there for each other. We can depend on each other. There's mutual trust. There's mutual respect. There's mutual value being added to this relationship. And I feel like people assume that because they are connected to you, that they automatically add value in every space, or because they value you in a certain way. They want you to value them in the same way. And it's like, we are not the same. What you may need me in your life for is not necessarily what I need you in my life for. And so what our reciprocity doesn't necessarily look like us giving the exact same things. It looks like me giving you what you need at a given time and you giving me what I need at a given time, and it being okay for those things to be different. And I think, especially if you are the person on the outside of that, because it happens to us too, right? Like we know what it feels like to have our space encroached upon. But we also, it's like being able to accept when other people, are setting their own boundaries and they don't need you to be X, Y, and Z and all up in their business or whatever else. Like, it's okay if you are the person on the receiving end of that. It's not personal. It's not something that you need to internalize. It doesn't mean that something is wrong with you, but it's okay for you to not be able to be everything for everybody. It's okay for you to not be able to add value to a particular person's life. It doesn't mean that you don't add value to anyone anywhere, but it means that you cannot force your way into holding a position for someone that they don't want you to hold. And for me, listen, If I need advice, I will ask for it. If I want an opinion specifically from a person about something, I will ask for it. And if it's not solicited, I may or may not be willing to hear you out. But if I don't want to keep talking or I don't want to do whatever else, like, no offense, but
all
that
offense.
is what it is, right? Like,
no offense,
no
but all offense.
Respect my boundaries, please. Respect
for real, because in a lot of ways, people will quote unquote give you advice, and as they are giving you advice, and you decide, okay, thank you for your advice, and you move in the manner that is best for you, they try to guilt you because you didn't take their advice. They do the whole guilting trip, and I've experienced that quite a bit in my family with elder members of my family. And even when it comes to reciprocity, I've experienced them not understanding that in my family. Like they hit you with oh, you don't never call me no more. Your life is just so busy. You just care about everything else but me. And it's like, you can call me too. Phones work both ways. Like, I don't understand. Like, at some point you have to say, okay, I'm going to have to help you be accountable for your part in it. You know what I mean? I grew up very old school, very children cater to the elderly. You know what I mean? And your child, so you stay in a child's place, you do as you're told, you cater to the people who are older than you. But the problem in my family is a lot of the older people don't know what to do when those children reach adulthood. They don't know how to switch over. That I may have my own children now. You know what I mean? I have okay, I understand that you are still the person that you were to me, but my responsibilities and the person that I have grown into be has altered and has changed. So therefore, you have a little more of your responsibility that you need to kick in to maintain the relationship that we have with one another. It's not just on me to reach out to you. It's not, you know what I mean? It's for us to reach out to one another. It's for us to grow this relationship together. It's not just for me to pour into this relationship. You need to pour into too. And it's a conversation. If I'm coming to you, or if we're talking about my life and how I'm running my life or how I'm living my life, it's a conversation. It's not a dictatorship. It's not what you say is what I should be doing. You can give me your wisdom, and I will take your wisdom into consideration. And because of who you are, it's probably going to have for me, it's probably going to have high consideration. But if I choose not to walk a particular way, then don't feel like that I'm being disrespectful. I'm not, or you know what I mean? I'm walking my own path. I'm living my own life. I'm being the main character in my own story, and I'm taking responsibility for the story that I'm writing. You know what I mean? You are the main character in your story. You wrote your story. You're still writing your story, but you can't write mine too. You can be a supporting cast member in my story, but not the main character. So.
And my parents, they taught me, like, at the end of the day, you have to live with your decisions. And so it's like, if I'm the one making the decisions and I'm the one who has to live in this body and in this life and deal with what's happening, like, I have to do what is going to work for me because I'm the one who has to live it. You can have your opinions and you can say and think whatever you want to think. But at the end of the day, it's not about making you comfortable because you aren't the one walking in these shoes. And if I'm not comfortable in my own shoes because I'm trying to make you comfortable somewhere over there, then I'm doing myself a disservice.
It's nothing worse than living with.
And if you really care about me, if you really love me, you wouldn't ask me to do that. You would be there. Your love and your support and your encouragement would not be contingent upon my willingness to make you comfortable in the way that I'm living my life. Particularly if what I'm doing has no direct impact on you. If I'm hurting you or I'm doing something to you, then that's a different conversation. But if I'm just living and you don't like how I'm living, like, you either love me and you're here for me and you accept me, or you don't. And if you don't, that is what it is. But please understand that the level of deference you receive in light of that is going to be extremely limited. And it's okay. And I think this is true, not just with like family members, but people in general, because especially coming from like a church culture, your family is bigger than just your family. There's a lot of, older people who are in your space and in your life who feel like, because they knew you were yay high running around, church and whatever else, and they could tell you whatever back then, that they're entitled to a certain level of deference now. And I know that my little brother and I sometimes throw people for a loop when we return energy as it is given. And it's not to be rude. It is not to be, disrespectful, but just please understand, I'm if I am giving deference to someone, it is a testament to how I was raised and the person that I am. It is not because you are entitled to anything. You are only entitled to what you are giving. And if what you are giving is disrespect, at best, at best, you are entitled to just as much disrespect as you are
That part.
And so if we're not doing that, it's because of who we are, not because it's what you're deserving of. And if you are not, and that's why, like, it's like if you're in church or whatever you're doing, and it's not causing you, like Ashley was saying, to think about how you are treating people. And am I treating someone the way that I want to be treated? And am I more offended by how someone responds to how I have behaved than I am offended by my own behavior? Am I holding other people to a higher standard than I'm holding myself to? If what you believe is not pushing you to make these considerations, then what is it for? What is it doing? Because if you understand that Jesus is supposed to be the mirror, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and that is not, you feel okay because that's not really the mirror that you're being held up against, then what are you doing? And just for me, like, obviously no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. I have stuff that I need to work on and stuff like that. But I'm not going to hold someone, I can't be mad at someone for not being a better person than I am in a given situation. I have to be willing to, if be the change that I want to see, be what I want to see. And especially I feel like if you're older, whatever else, if you want to be respected or given that level of deference, then you have to set the tone. And you have to set a good tone, a positive tone. And if you're not doing that, you can't be upset with someone who's younger than you, or not experienced, whatever you want to call it. Setting boundaries and not wanting to be bothered. So yeah, I feel like that's probably a good place to,
Yeah.
if you guys have any, final thoughts or anything you want to add, go on ahead.
I just think I just wanted to say this was a phenomenal gathering. I think it is a testament that you can have church and not be in a building. You know what I mean? And that you can have church with people who are walking different spiritual paths. For Ashley to speak on things, and Shernell and you and me, I'm over here like I could just, the spirit is just grabbed my shoulders like eagle talons and is about to flap me away. I could just fly out of my seat. You know what I mean? Because it's so on pitch with where I am spiritually. And I feel like that is a testament to that. And I also feel that it's a testament to love being the great unifier. That when we are all driven by love, no matter what our walks are, that you can be united under anything, you know what I mean? Because love is what is driving you. And I think that I have nothing. This was perfection in my eyes, just because everyone spoke from a place of love, a place of understanding. And sometimes that's what we need more than anything else. Not necessarily correction, but love, because love chastens as well. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's all I got to say.
Agreed 100%. And I think it's the transparency and the vulnerability, and us just feeling safe with each other, like we, because I think, life is so vast, and there's, so much out there, so many opportunities, so many different decisions and things that we go through, decisions we make and things that we go through. And I think that the best way, to really learn is to have these kinds of conversations with people, and to hear about experiences and other perspectives, and expose yourself to that, because you never know what you're going to encounter or what you're going to be up against or what somebody else is going through. And, they may have that little piece or be able to articulate it in a way that, specifically speaks to you. And that's exactly what you needed to hear. Or maybe you don't need it right now, but something is going to come up a week from now and it's going to speak specifically to that. And I think that that's what community and fellowship and all of that is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about us using our differences to be able to provide perspective for each other, and coming together based on our compassion and our empathy, and being able to trust each other because we feel safe enough to be able to share. And then it's everybody being a blessing. There shouldn't be a scenario where everybody is not able to be a blessing to each other, because we all have perspective, we all have experience, and we all have something to contribute. And I'm so glad that that is what you guys are getting from this, because it's what I'm getting from this. It's my goal in the One Rule Church, and in establishing this platform for us to be able to have these conversations. And I hope that that's what people who are listening are getting from it as well. So for everyone listening right now and everyone who listens on the podcast later, thank you so much for joining us. We cannot wait to be back next week. It'll be on Saturday again, same time, 1:00 p.m. Pacific time and 4:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we will be talking about the Black community and its relationship with Christianity. And I think that that's going to be a very spirited and interesting discussion, to say the least. So don't forget to tune in. If you have any questions or anything, any ideas about topics that you want us to cover, please follow the One Rule Church podcast Facebook page, and follow the One Rule at One Rule Church on Instagram to stay updated. We will be hosting a clubhouse room soon, just to kick it with each other and talk and fellowship, and figure out if there's any studies or anything that anyone wants to do. So and we'll be posting our book list as well soon, so follow us to stay updated on everything that we have going on. And we will catch y'all next week. Love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.